when I teach beginner archery classes, I teach something called the 4-step drill. If you haven't seen that video yet, it's in the series. I would check it out because this is going to make a lot more sense if you watch that one first. At the end of the 4-step drill, I always tell my beginning classes, there's 2 things. If you forget everything I've told you today, there's 2 things that I want you to remember and to think about during the whole class. And if you do that, you're going to be successful after the first day. And number 1 goes to our step number 3, which was our anchor position. So we have stance, bow arm, anchor, release. Those are the 4-step drill that I like to teach my beginner classes. So step number 3 is our anchor position. I always want you to focus on your anchor. The anchor is so important. If you change where you bring the string to on your face, it's always, your arrow is always going to land in a different spot downrange. So I just want to show you a couple ways that it's going to change where it hits on the target and how you can fix it, and it's going to make you a better archer at the end. All right, so for anchor position, like I taught in the series, I like it when archers bring their string to the corner of their smile. Even better, I like it when you take your thumb, and if you can get it locked in your jaw here, that's going to give you 2 anchor positions, and it's going to lock you in really tight. Okay, and if you do this over and over and over again, come to the same spot every time you pull back, you're going to get pretty good because you're going to start learning where do you need to aim. And once you figure out where you need to aim and you have a consistent anchor, everything's going to start grouping really well together. Now, here's why anchor is so important. If you don't have an anchor position, I like to call it a floating anchor, which means you're not touching anywhere on your face. I want to show you what could happen. Okay, so you can pull back and you can be way out here. Now, if you're way out here, your arrow is most likely going to go off to the left. All right, and then the next time if you pull back, and you come in tight to the face, that's going to line you up. So now you're going to have a left shot and you're going to have a middle shot. But if you stay inside here all the time, it's always going to go to the same position. All right, so you want to make sure you stay away from that floating anchor. Really get in tight and find somewhere on your face that you can bring it to on the same spot each time. Now, another thing a lot of beginners do is they will come back to different parts of their face. So on one shot, they may come only to here, okay? This isn't going to give you very much power out of your bow. So there's a good chance that your arrows are going to go low because you're not going to get quite as much power than if you were to come to the corner of the smile. And then maybe the next shot, you're not really thinking about it. And the next shot, you're coming way back here because you shot so low, you're thinking, oh, I'll just pull the string back further and that'll make me shoot higher. And now your anchor is way back here. This is going to make you shoot high and maybe to the left if you're a right-handed archer. So you want to make sure that you put the same amount of power in the string every time. So if you can find one spot on your face, that's why I like the corner of the smile because it never changes. If you can find one spot, you're going to be pulling back with the same amount of power on each shot, which is going to make you more consistent. Now, the last thing I want to show you, so we've talked about in and out, okay? We've talked about less power, more power. The last one is maybe the most common that I see in my beginner classes. They change the height on their face, and they're not really sure why. I think a lot of times it's because they're trying to figure out how to aim, and we'll talk about that in another series. So they're changing their positioning, but when they change their positioning, this is going to change high and low, okay? So let's say you start out on your first shot coming back to the corner of the smile, all right? And you get a sight setting, and you figure out where to aim in the yellow. And then you're not really thinking about it, and on the next shot, you come up here to your eye. Now, if you come to your eye, that's going to change the position of where the string is. You're probably going to shoot a lot lower, all right? And then you're like, oh, I just shot low. So then on the next shot, you're going to aim up higher, but instead of aiming up higher, you're just going to lower your anchor down. This is going to make you shoot a lot higher. So if you notice, if you watch the string here, I'm going to keep my bow arm in the same position. I'm just going to change where the string goes. You're going to see how it's going to move the bow here. Okay, so here's the corner of my smile. Okay, under its chin, up here on the eye. Okay, this is going to change where my bow goes. And that's ultimately also going to change where your arrow goes on the target. So you want to make sure that each time you're coming back, and that's again why I like the corner of the smile, because it's always going to be the same when you're a beginner archer. Now over time you may become a better shooter, and you might end up liking a little bit higher on the cheek, a little bit lower, and that's okay because you're going to understand a little bit more. But when you're first starting out, it's really important just to find a solid spot where you can come to every time. If you can get your thumb in the jaw and your fingers on the corner of the smile, then it's going to be really consistent each time when you're shooting. So that's the number one thing I like to tell my archers is make sure you have a consistent anchor point, wherever it's going to be. Where if you choose it to be in a different spot, just make sure it's the same every time. And that's going to help with your aiming. The second thing that I teach in my classes, that I tell my archers, if you forget everything else I'm going to tell you, the second thing I want you to remember is make sure you have a good follow through. So a lot of archers, when they first start out, they think that the end of the shot is as soon as they let go of the arrow. So I see this happen a lot. They set up, it looks great. Come back to their anchor position, it looks awesome. 1,000, 2,000, then they release and they look for the arrow. Okay, or, oh, where'd my arrow go? Oh, okay, give me the next arrow. Okay, and they're already done with the shot. They think that this is the end, okay, which makes sense because the arrow's left the bow. But in reality, that's actually the middle of the shot. You want to actually get one more step in there, and that's called your follow through. It's called your step 4, release or follow through. You want to make sure on your follow through that you stay in as tight as you can to your face, because you want to keep everything in one straight line. The straighter your line is when you release, the straighter your arrow is going to go to where you want it to go. Okay, so what I tell my archers when they first starting out is always remember the letter T position. And I talked about this in a couple other videos as well. So here's your trunk, bow arm comes up, 3 fingers, place it on the hook, on the string, pull back, and now you can see my letter T position. As you release, your fingers are just going to glide across your face back to your ear. But as you can see, I'm still in the letter T. Once you hear the arrow hit the target, that's the end of your shot. You can let your bow arm down and you can let your release hand down. What I see a lot of times happen, like I just showed you, is the bow arm's already down or it's moved out of the way so that way you can see where the arrow is going. Well, you have to remember, whatever your limbs are doing, that's probably a good indication of where your arrow is going to go. Okay, so that follow through is super important. Staying tight to the face, okay, with a good anchor. That was step number 1. And then on that release, staying tight to the face as you release, and the tighter you stay, the straighter the arrow is going to fly. So good anchor point and a good follow through. If you can remember those 2 things on your first day of archery, you're going to be shooting really well by the end of your class. Hope that helped.